Hi, my name is Brittany McCullum, and today I will be presenting on my special topic, which is focused on reading. As a teacher, the topic of increasing literacy has become quite redundant. However, the fact of the matter is that we have an astounding number of children who are not reading on grade level. And in my county alone, recent data suggests that only 48% of students in K through 12 are reading on grade level. This has dire implications not only for literature teachers such as myself, but for all content area teachers. So, in this presentation, I want to talk about how we can empower student readers. The aim of this presentation is to help teachers motivate students through proven cognitive and effective strategies. We're going to explore foundational theories and connect them to practical classroom applications, and ultimately learn how to foster a love of reading within our students. So I wanted to pose this question. Imagine a classroom where every student chooses to read. Not because they have to, not because there's an assignment aligned to the reading, not because there's a test at the end of the unit, but because they actually want to read. How do we as educators create this environment? I found that the answer to this question is heavily reliant on motivation. Some of the challenges that we experience as educators is that many students are disengaged from reading. This could come from a lack of choice, negative experiences, or an overemphasis on technical skill. So my goal with this presentation is to explore foundational theories such as self-determination and self-efficacy, and connect these theories to student learning and classroom practices, and provide educators with practical strategies to overcome these barriers. So first, I decided to focus on key motivation frameworks that were discussed within this class. The first one that we're going to look at is self-determination theory, which poses that there are three basic needs central to human motivation. The second one that we'll look at is self-efficacy, which is the belief in the ability to accomplish a task. And then the third is expectancy value theory, which says that motivation depends on the belief in success and the perceived value of that task. So let's begin by taking a deeper dive into self-determination theory, or SDT. As discussed earlier, there were three psychological needs for motivation. That included autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And as you can see on the left-hand side, it shows how these might pertain to a classroom situation. So autonomy is where a student might feel like they have control over their reading. So an example is they get to choose a book about their favorite hobby. Competence is the student actually believes that they can succeed in the reading task. Relatedness is the student feels connected to their peers, teachers, and the material. So over on the right-hand side, I have provided this figure from John Milne, and Milne argues that the recent emphasis on the science of reading has led to an excessive focus on skill development, often at the expense of other important approaches. I've sat in many a PD where we have gone through the science of reading. Milne contends that this narrow perspective overlooks the fact that being a reader involves more than just acquiring a skill. And he says this in his article. When we consider a broader view of what it means to be a reader, we need to consider the reader as a whole person and their place in a wider social context. So what you see here in this figure, it implies that if the three needs are met, then certain reading outcomes are achieved, which you can ultimately see over here on the right-hand side, where it shows reading outcomes and view of self as a reader. So if we take these three needs and we meet them, then what we'll have as an outcome is we'll have accuracy in whatever task is given. The student can show understanding. You will have a student who is actually willing to read, and you'll have a student who feels like they have achieved something. They will value whatever product they are giving or producing, and ultimately find enjoyment in what they are doing or the act of reading. Now within SDT, there are two foundations of this theory, and it's intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations. And as an educator, it's important that we can distinguish between the two. So extrinsic is everything that is an outside reward or an avoidance of punishment. Some examples in just life in general include filing your taxes. You might file your taxes to avoid a penalty, which is that punishment, or to actually get a reward, which is the refund. You might clean your house to make a good impression on guests, or for kids, they might do it just to make their parents happy. Within the classroom, extrinsic motivations might involve working for grades or for teacher approval. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, comes from internal satisfaction and personal interest. Some examples might include reading about human learning because it is fascinating, or pursuing hobbies like watching game shows for enjoyment. In education, extrinsically motivated learners are more likely to engage deeply, seek challenges, and persist through difficulty and experience joy in their learning. Now, Amrad emphasizes that we do need to balance extrinsic and intrinsic motivation in education, and she supports a nuanced view of this. So, within that nuanced view and understanding that you need to balance the two, she did create a list of advantages that illustrate how intrinsic motivations foster certain things. So, for example, it fosters a deeper cognitive and emotional engagement. It creates persistence and resilience in overcoming challenges. It allows students to gain creativity and a genuine understanding of a topic, and it promotes high achievement and long-term interest in learning. While she did provide advantages of intrinsic motivation, she also provided some drawbacks of extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation can effectively encourage student learning, and productive behavior. However, in the classroom setting, it does have its limitations. Students who are explicitly or only driven by extrinsic motivation might only put forth minimum effort when required to complete a task, and sometimes it might resort in copying classmates' work, and they may abandon the activity once the external reward or reinforcement is removed. The next theory that we'll explore in relation to reading is social cognitive theory, with a specific focus on self-efficacy. So, how does self-efficacy affect reading behavior and cognition? Self-efficacy plays a critical role in shaping learners' motivation, effort, and persistence, particularly in reading. Social cognitive theory identifies several mechanisms through which self-efficacy impacts behavior, and here are three of them. First, activity choices. Students are more likely to engage in reading tasks when they believe they can succeed. For example, if they have completed a similar reading task in the past, then they might approach a new one with greater confidence. This is why it's important to possibly meet your students where they are when you are giving them the first assignment. The second one, goal setting. Higher self-efficacy leads to more ambitious goals. So a confident reader is going to set goals to complete challenging books or tackle complex texts, while students with a lower self-efficacy may just avoid advancing their reading altogether. And then the third one, effort and persistence. Students with strong self-efficacy in reading are more likely to persist when faced with difficult vocabulary or unfamiliar genres. They might use strategies such as rereading or seeking help. Those with low self-efficacy are more likely to give up quickly. So, here are some key factors that build self-efficacy in reading in particular. Performance accomplishments. So, the most significant predictor of self-efficacy is a history of success in similar tasks. So, those who achieve small, manageable victories in reading are going to feel more confident when they are tackling a new challenge. Vicarious experiences. Observing peers or teachers successfully engaged in reading tasks are going to boost their self-efficacy, and it's especially effective if the model initially struggles but overcomes the obstacles, showing that effort leads to success. This is the importance of modeling when you're teaching. Show your thought process to your students, and if you are struggling with something, it is excellent for your student to see that, because that is going to boost their self-efficacy when they are doing it on their own. Verbal persuasion. Positive reinforcement is always going to help students believe in their capabilities. Constructive criticism, framed as opportunities for improvement, will also help build resilience. Psychological states. Students who experience anxiety during reading might misinterpret these feelings as evidence of incompetence. Conversely, a calm and focused state enhances self-efficacy. This is important when it comes to classroom environment. You want to create an environment that creates a calm psychological state. So, when we are trying to assess self efficacy, there are several key indicators that we can look for. For students with high self efficacy in reading, they're more likely to engage in independent reading outside of class, tackle challenging texts, include unfamiliar genres or academic readings, develop intrinsic motivation for reading as they associate it with success and enjoyment. On the other hand, students that have low self efficacy are at risk of avoiding reading tasks altogether, developing a fixed mindset, believing that they're not good at reading in general, and experiencing frustration or disengagement during reading instruction. The final theory that we're going to examine as it pertains to reading motivation is expectancy value theory. This theory, as its name suggests, revolves around two key concepts: expectancy and value. Expectancy refers to one's belief in their ability to succeed at a task, and value refers to the importance or significance the individual places on the task. As you can see in the column for value, we are going to be looking again at intrinsic value as well as other values as well. But here's an example from the classroom, which is especially important for educators. Imagine that you have given a student a reading assignment. The student with high expectancy, they may say something like, I'm good at reading comprehension, and high value, this might go through their mind, this book is interesting and will help me with my project, is likely to be motivated in doing that specific task. Now, expectancy and value are influenced by a variety of factors, but here I've listed a few that we've already discussed: self-efficacy, past experiences, and tasks. The last portion of this presentation is really going to focus on what we as educators can do to motivate our students to become readers and empower them as readers. So here's a couple of things that we can do. High expectancy and value example. A teacher can introduce a mystery novel that aligns with student interest, such as that's going along with intrinsic value, and explains how solving mysteries builds critical thinking and sets up a scaffolded reading activity to ensure success. A way that we can address our low expectancy or value is, for a student who's struggling with reading, the teacher provides a choice of engaging, level-appropriate texts and pairs them with supportive peer for shared reading, and celebrates small successes to build confidence and persistence. To make reading meaningful for students, we can take those three needs as outlined by the SDT and apply them in practice. So here's an example of autonomy in practice. We're going to provide diverse text options, including graphic novels, audiobooks, and culturally relevant stories. Competence in practice, we can scaffold tasks with gradual increases in difficulty, such as starting with shorter passages and then progressing to full-length books. And then finally, relatedness in practice. We can foster connections through shared reading experiences like doing literature circles or buddy reading programs. Here are some specific strategies for motivating readers that align with commonplace components of every classroom. So within social elements, you can incorporate social elements such as book clubs where students can share their perspectives. Within technology, you can use technology like interactive ebooks or apps that track progress or offer gamified rewards. And then finally, within celebration, you can celebrate individual reading milestones to build confidence and to reinforce effort. Furthermore, educators should be creating an environment that motivates reading. For example, you could have an environment of choice and voice. Build classroom libraries with a range of genres and levels that can ensure every student can find something engaging. Scaffold their success. Model reading strategies through think alouds. Break down how to infer meaning or to analyze characters. Provide feedback. Use specific, actionable feedback that encourages a growth mindset. Integrate technology, like I said before. Use platforms like Epic or Raz Kids to individualize reading assignments and to track their growth. And finally, to address some of those barriers to reading engagement, educators can help reluctant readers by pairing them with a peer or a mentor who can model positive reading behaviors. They can use read alouds to make challenging texts more accessible and enjoyable, and they can build relevance by selecting readings that are tied to current events or that pique student interest. So here's my call to action for all educators out there. Let's empower our students to become engaged readers. By implementing these evidence based strategies, we can cultivate a love of reading that inspires a lifetime of learning. Let's work together to create classrooms where every student chooses to read, not because they have to, but because they actually want to.